Hi guys. So how the speculative fiction I read fits into our discussion this week. I read the article, The 5 Foundations of World Building, and I thought it was great. And I've definitely read some speculative fiction that is like, that requires a lot of world building. However, my favorite speculative fiction choices are usually exist in our world. So then there's not really much world building required at all. Like, this is just a good old-fashioned ghost story, and I loved it. And there was no world building required necessarily because this is set in our world where there's a ghost. And it's just a great ghost story. And so, like I say, very little world building necessary because it's set in our world. And I think that's my favorite kind of speculative fiction, is one that exists here in conjunction with us, kind of thing, versus a fantasy novel that's a completely different realm entirely, with no connection at all to us. That's not my favorite kind of speculative fiction, because I guess I want to believe in the extraordinary right here. So now, another favorite series of mine is the Dark Tower series by Stephen King that started with The Gunslinger, and there's an immense amount of world building, but it's character driven still, but there's a lot of world building here. But my favorite was the drawing of the three. This is what really sucked me in, because he draws three characters from our world, from a world that exists where people have seen the Terminator. This was my favorite, where our world can be connected to that world. Kind of like even with Harry Potter, that there's an immense amount of world building, but for us muggles, that world exists with our world. We just didn't know it. That's awesome. Like, I love the idea in that extraordinary possibility that exists with our world already. So that's my favorite kind of speculative fiction, where I don't have to do that much world building. So then when you don't have to, when you've got a speculative fiction piece that's even fantasy like this, where you don't have to do a lot of world building, especially in a book too, when you've already established the world, but it's connected to our world. So this book doesn't have to world build, but it's still, got fantasy elements. Then it is character driven. You've got, wonderful points of view. Like, even I'm really glad that Claire mentioned the interview with the vampire on Victoria's video, because the vampire Lestat, again, Anne Rice is building a world, giving us this origin story back to the 18th century with Lestat de Lioncourt, and he's so wonderful. I'm totally Team Lestat. But anyhow, it still exists in our world, unbeknownst to us, unless we encounter a vampire. So I like that. That's the kind of speculative fiction. Like, not all speculative fiction needs to do immense world building for laws and all that kind of stuff. I like that can exist in our realm and just be connected in a different way with extraordinary things over and above what we know here.